Hello and welcome to a scene at the library. No, you're not seeing double. There are 4 of us this time. Hi, I'm Sean. Today I'm with
Sophia.
Derek.
And Sarah.
And you may be under the pretense I brought you here for free coffee, everybody. They may or may not be true. But since we're here anyway, let's talk about The Princess Bride from 1987.
Wesley had no money for marriage, so he packed his few belongings and left the farm to seek his fortune.
I think it goes without saying, we're all big super fans of this. So.
And 1987 was a long, long time ago, wasn't it?
It wasn't even a thought.
Actually, it did start as a film. I did see the movie in the theater. I know it's shocking, way back in 1987.
Mm-hmm.
A friend asked me if I was interested in attending the new Rob Reiner film. The year before, he had done Stand By Me, which was one of the better Stephen King book-to-film translations.
Mm-hmm.
The Princess Bride, I didn't know what it's about. Heard it was sort of a children's fairy tale. Gave it a shot anyway. Have never regretted it. It was a wonderful, wonderful thing. When did y'all first see it?
I cannot tell you when I first saw it. I have slept since then, napped since then, had 2 kids since then. I know it's been a long time. I do remember, though, watching it as a kid and being like, yes, but sort of like relating to the little kid, like, ew, kissing scenes. And then at the end, like, okay, that's okay.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I was like the little boy, the grandson.
Yes.
I saw it when it came out in video stores, so like a year after it came out at the theater. And I had the same reaction as the grandson. My parents were explaining it to me like, yeah, we got The Princess Bride for family night. Fantastic. What's it about? Well, it's got swashbuckling, sword fights, pirates, giants, monsters. I'm in. Yeah, Mom. There's kissing, romance. No, it's okay. I'm not interested. Watched it anyway. It's family movie night. You're not getting out of it. You had no choice back then. And ended up loving it, just like Fred Savage as a grandson. I came around to it, and I've loved it ever since. It's so quotable. It's so fun. What about you, Sophia?
I don't remember how old. I remember being sick. So it was actually like a repeat from the movie. I was actually sick, had the chicken pox, and I watched it. And I didn't mind the kissing scenes, but Wesley also wasn't my favorite character. So I actually liked Inigo Montoya more. He was my favorite character. And he was the reason why I fell in love with the movie.
That's very comfortable.
So,
Why that character, though? Like,
why that character?
Mm.
I don't know. He had a great backstory. It wasn't off of just the classic romance aspect. He was actually there. His purpose was, avenging the death of his father. And that gave him his main purpose in life. He just wanted to track down the person that killed his father. And he literally said that, who he was and what he was going to do, like 6 times throughout the film.
Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
Was it 6 times that he said that line?
Yeah,
Wow.
it was 6 times.
We all know the famous line, right? Or is that the famous line?
Yeah, I think it's the famous line because I think it was said like the most in the film.
I think this, by now, almost the entire script is the famous line.
Well, yeah, true.
Because when you get started quoting, everybody has a favorite.
Yeah. Is it one of the most quotable films? Like in recent times, perhaps?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, what's everybody's favorite?
There are so many to choose from, but I know just from experience, because I invoke it myself so many times in daily life, the line from Peter Cook's priest who's performing the wedding ceremony, a dweem within a dweem.
Oh, okay.
As well as the rest of everything else that he says. But that I catch myself saying just so many times.
All right. What about you, Sarah?
As you wish. As you wish.
Okay.
Always.
It's hard to beat.
Yeah, I mean,
As you wish was all
it says
he
a
ever
lot.
said.
It's not just about, love as romance, but just like the grandfather, grandson. to say it at the end. I think mine is inconceivable.
He didn't fall? Inconceivable.
I'm pretty sure nobody used that word very often before the movie. But since then, anytime I hear inconceivable, I think Wallace Shawn, and one of his many times he says that, I think 5 times, but I could be wrong.
There's a scene, and it's after Wesley has come back from being mostly dead, and taken.
Oh yeah, Billy Crystal.
Yeah. Oh,
Not
I love that scene with the two of them. He's like, oh no, he's not dead. He's mostly dead. We can fix that. I've seen worse. But after that, they go to the castle, and they're all together. And it's Inigo Montoya and Wesley, and they're coming up with their plan on how they're going to storm the castle, rescue Princess Buttercup, and kill the six-fingered man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, yeah, we're on a tight thing. That doesn't leave much time for dilly-dallying. That's my favorite line right there. It's not much time for dilly-dallying.
Oh, speaking of the six-fingered man, now it's Christopher Guest, who was in This Is Spinal Tap, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's Rob Reiner, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So he's got 6 fingers in one hand, 5 on the other, so he's 11. So is it a running gag in all of Rob Reiner's films with Christopher Guest that he has something to do with 11? Because This Is Spinal Tap, he has the guitar amp, goes up to 11. So I need to watch more, I guess, and see.
It's an obsession with two ones together.
I guess so.
Besides the film itself, which you can watch, it can be on television, and I'll get immediately drawn into it again. There are other things, if you are a fan, that I highly recommend you look for. There is the book that Cary Elwes himself wrote. Cary played Wesley, a.k.a. the Dread Pirate Roberts. It's his memoir of making of the film. It is wonderful just in the background details that you get, dealing with all of the filmmakers and the performers. And I really, if you get a chance to listen to the book as an audiobook, I highly recommend that version because Cary Elwes himself does the narration of the book. And so when he gets to the parts where he's talking about Rob Reiner or Andre the Giant, he slips into his very gentle, very polite impersonation of some of his co-filmmakers and just adds another layer of wonder to the story. Highly recommended. That and another one that came out a couple years ago is actually a graphic novel by an author-illustrator named Box Brown, and he did the biography of Andre the Giant in a graphic novel form. It's very nicely illustrated. It is very accurate to Andre's life, and again, highly recommended for anybody that is a lover of the film and in turn has become a fan of Andre the Giant. Whether you're a fan of the film or a fan of him as a wrestler, it really is a good read. It's a quick read, very pleasant. Highly recommended.
Did they actually show portions of when he was filming it? Did they illustrate any of that?
There, of course, is some reference to the Princess Bride, but it starts with his early life, going straight through.
Oh wow! Okay. All right. So we talked about quotes. What about favorite scenes? Anybody have one?
So one of my favorites is the sword fighting scene.
Yes.
Partially, like watching it as a kid, it's just like, I like the sword, I like the fighting, and then I like the, it stinks for you because I'm actually right-handed. And they both switch, and they end up both switching. Now, like older, like when you do your research about it and everything, you find out that not only did the original author do research on sword fighting and make sure that everything in that scene that they're talking about is accurate, the two actors were actually practicing, and they did it all themselves. They practiced both with their left hand and their right hand. And the only thing that was done as a stunt was one of the flips. Everything else is all them.
Oh, like when Wesley ends up doing a flip over him? Wow.
Yeah, everything
Yeah.
else is all them.
They had to do all of the fighting themselves. And when I remember the first time I saw it, I loved the characters, the story, the humor, of course, was amazing. But I was eyeing the fencing choreography critically. And it is some of the best sword fighting that has ever been put on film. They perfected all the choreography. And I agree with Sophia. That is just the icing on the cake, the real finishing touch to all the great components of the film.
Well, I actually have like two favorite scenes, and it's like after he comes back from being almost dead and they're at the bridge. And Wesley's just now like getting to the part where like he can move his finger and just physics like look at it. He's like so proud of him. He's like, you moved your finger and oh you turned your head, and I was just like, yes, that's what's important in this moment. Like y'all are about to go and try and rescue Buttercup, but he's just focused on like the right then and there, like, oh look, you're moving. And then after the not real marriage, whenever she's walking with the king and she gives him a kiss and she's like, he said, what's that for? And she's like, you've always been so kind to me and just want to do that because, in the morning I'll be dead. And he's just like, oh, that's nice. She kissed me. And I was just like, yes, just all of that.
I think that's one of the strengths of the film is it's comedic, but there's no setup and a punchline. It all plays into moving the story forward. That sounds like a broken record, but the sword fight's my favorite, but I love the lead up to it as well. It's the Dread Pirate Roberts, and you got a mercenary. This should be a down and dirty fight. If he helps Roberts up the cliff, he's going to just stab him immediately. It's nothing like that. It's gentlemanly, it's sportsmanlike. That's how you subvert expectations, Rian Johnson. Take that, Star Wars Episode 8. It does everything different than how you expect it to be. The left hand, the right hand, and if you look at Inigo Montoya, his sword is on his, I want to say it's on his right, and he pulls it with his left.
I think so.
And then, or no, it might be the other way. And then, it's one of the two. But then Wesley's is the opposite. So you believe Wesley that he's left. Oh, yeah, it's on Inigo Montoya's left because he pulls it with his right, and then he tells Wallace Shawn's character, yeah, I'm gonna use my left hand. I'm gonna make it a challenge. I'm so bored. And you find out so much about the characters through that whole situation. You find out that they're both honorable. You find out about Inigo Montoya, what his purpose is. He's not just a cutthroat for money. He's there to avenge his dad. He's got a real sense of purpose in the story. So that sword fight is just tops. And then, like everybody else said after that, you've got the great duel. Reminds me of Errol Flynn, Adventures of Robin Hood. Got that set design. It looks like a stage theater production, but it works because it's a story within a story after all. So it can get away with that. The swords are a bit wobbly, like Kermit's arms in the Muppet Show or something, just flailing around, but it's okay. We buy into it because we like the characters so much. So I absolutely agree. And I think the comedy does help push the story, which is what makes it so memorable. It's not just a joke for a joke's sake. The characters have life because of it. Anybody read the book?
It's been a while, but yeah.
Okay.
I did read the book. I do remember that the whole title of Princess Bride came from because his two daughters wanted him to write a book. And he was like, okay, what do you want a book about? And one daughter was like a princess, and the other one was like a bride. He's like, well, that's the title.
That's how it came about?
That's how it came about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
As a boy, I heard that title, and I was like, The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
Not really, for like a 6-year-old kid.
No, you hear
Didn't
that,
grab you.
and you
Yeah,
either think Disney and like Disney Princess, or you think
something like that.
like Notebook, but you don't think of what it actually turns out to be. And yeah, romance is definitely there. Like it is a love story throughout, but it's not just a love story between Wesley and Buttercup. I mean, it's like the love for his dad with Inigo Montoya. There's even Billy Crystal and Carol Kane. Like when I did some research, like their characters had like no backstory. they came up with all of that. In that scene, they came up with all of that backstory right there.
Wow, they feel so fleshed out too. I never would have thought that.
And they just bounced off of each other. So it's like the love that they had right there. And then, as Sarah said earlier, like the scene where it was like, Andre's like, oh, you moved your finger. It's like, even the love there, it's like they've only known each other a short time, but it's like, that's like squad goals. Like, you want that kind of support and that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't cover just the one type of love.
It feels very genuine, I think, amongst them all. And that was the other thing I was surprised by when I first saw it, is them actually invoking the term true love and meaning it, following through with it and, proving throughout the story and through the film that it's like, no, this isn't just an accepted, thing, that they are serious about it. And it's sentimental, maybe a little bit saccharine, but again, it's so believable and so genuine. I think that's what makes it work.
I agree. Okay, we talked a little bit about Andre the Giant before. Can just real quick, is he everybody's favorite, or how did everybody think about Andre the Giant coming in? Because I knew him as a wrestler growing up, and I didn't really think twice about wrestler in a movie. Yeah, okay, sure, but is he just not so likable in this? He's so great. I mean, you care for the guy. His acting is not tops. Let's put it that way.
No, Rob Reiner really wanted him. So, like, Rob Reiner, he was like, I really want him. He's, like, physically perfect. Mm-hmm. I can't understand a stinking word that he says. So Rob Reiner, literally took all of Andre's lines and recorded them. And it was like, hey, you listen to this. So, like, there's pictures and there's stuff of Andre going around the set, and he's got headphones in. And that's how he learned his lines. He didn't have the script. He was actually listening.
He learned it phonetically. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
So, I mean, coming from that, and then coming from, I wasn't at that video store age. I watched it when it was on TV, and I was younger. I didn't have the knowledge of Andre the Giant. So, like, to me, he was more of a lovable character.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, it's interesting that William Goldman wrote the book in 1973, and it took 14 years before it got released as a film. And in that time, he was looking at Arnold Schwarzenegger to play the role of Fezzik, the giant. And then Schwarzenegger got huge, Terminator, Commando, all those kind of films. They just couldn't afford him. They just didn't have the money for Schwarzenegger at that point. And Schwarzenegger was like, you really should talk to Andre. He's actually a really nice guy. I think you get along with him well. And what I didn't know is that Andre the Giant was in so much pain at the time.
He was quite sick. Yeah.
Yes.
He walked with pain.
Yes.
He had to ride around on a special four-wheeler on the set. All the stunts where he's, picking things up or bashing people, he had to be assisted behind the scenes. He was not a very healthy man at that point.
When Wesley's on his back, that's actually a stunt double, except for the close-ups. Everything else is a stunt double. And you can kind of tell because Andre the Giant was like 7 foot. The stunt double is definitely a little bit shorter. Wesley's not that much below his height, but I just didn't know he was in so much pain throughout all of that. And I don't think he's the only one. It was Carrie Elways.
Oh, yeah.
Had a bunch of injuries.
There's a famous on-set injury. Like, if you watch, like, the top 10, top 20 injuries that made it into film, like, he has an injury that made it into a scene. They took, it was the scene with the six-fingered guy, the Count. He knocks him with the butt of his sword, and you see Wesley fall to the ground. Well, what you don't see is that right after that scene, he gets sent to the hospital because he was knocked unconscious.
He was really knocked out.
Literally got knocked out.
Oh, wow.
But that's the scene in the movie. So when you see him drop, that's him.
That's really him
dropping.
Yeah. Out cold.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Now I know he had his toes broke during the sword fight duel on top of the Cliffs of Madness with Inigo Montoya. And you watch him, you don't really see that. He's kind of careful about how he does it, but he pushes through it. The scene where he's talking to Buttercup after he rescues her, I think he hurt one of his legs. So if you watch how he gets down, and I noticed this even as a kid, he gets down really gracefully, and he gets up almost like he's doing a half squat, but reversed, and gets up. And it turns out he was in a dune buggy accident right before it.
Which, as I recall, he was afraid to admit, of course, to Rob Reiner, you know, because he didn't want to affect the shooting of the film.
Well, and apparently he told Reiner, and Reiner said, no, you know, there's other ways we can film this. He goes, no, let's just go through it anyway, see if I can make it work. So, I mean, he really suffered for his craft. He was hurting in that film.
Yeah, but if I remember correctly, both him and Reiner were huge fans of the book. So they wanted to make it work.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were huge fans of it going in, and then I don't remember much, but I remember that they'd been trying, or people had been trying for years to get The Princess Bride to become a movie. And for one reason or another, it just fell through and it didn't happen. So I think that might have been part of why he didn't want to say anything, because he didn't want to be like day one of shooting and I'm the one that messes it up.
I know they went through some other directors before they got to Reiner even, which I think it works out for the best. You mentioned Rob Reiner at the very beginning. Well, that's staying in. Rob Reiner at the very beginning. I totally agree. I think he's underappreciated. Stand By Me.
Very much so.
The romantic comedy Misery. Not as romantic or comedic as I'm implying it to be, but some of the best Stephen King adaptations.
It's a feel-good movie for the season, though.
It can be for Kathy Bates, sure.
Right.
But yeah.
Who's your favorite criminal in it? Like, out of all the who's your favorite bad guy?
Like the Mercenaries?
Just
Or-
anyone in the film.
Mercenaries, Humperdinck, and Count Rugen?
Yeah, it's
Yes.
I think is his name.
Yeah. I can't stand. Oh, it's almost like who do you like a little more
Yeah.
between Humperdinck and Rugen, and they're both like each. No, I can't decide. I hate them equally. Like they're.
I like that.
Yeah, they are equally slimy.
Yeah.
And
They
of course,
are.
it always gets me when they're chatting, you know, casually together, and you know, the five-finger or the six-finger man says something, well, take care, you know, if you haven't got your health, what have you got, you know? And it's like, do they have a background relationship here that, you know, we should know about?
Rugen plays it up more like, you know, they're best buds or maybe possibly more. And Humperdinck's just like, you know, you're pretty much my lackey, but I got enough confidence in you more than anybody else. But it's not an equal relationship at all. And I love how they play against each other. For your question, I'm not counting Inigo Montoya or Fezzik, because they're not really villains to me. I think I'm going to go with Wallace Shawn as the Sicilian. His voice is so grating, but it's also like music to my ears. And he's just so quotable, and yeah. That's my pick. I'm going with Wallace Shawn. What was the character's name?
Zinni.
What was it?
Vizzini.
Vizzini?
Yeah.
Vizzini.
Oh, okay. Vizzini. I'm going with Vizzini then.
Yes.
Yes.
Also my favorite. He just seems so like, whenever they're at the scene and like it's the whole drinking with the poison, and he's just like back and forth. He's like, well, you would think, and then I would think, and then you would think. And then he's like, what's that? Traces him around real quick. And then they drink, and he's just like, oh, I outwitted you. He is so excited, and then just whew,
He's gone.
gone,
Falls
done.
over that.
Tongue out.
It's
gone.
perfect.
Yeah, he plays himself up to be such a smart tactician, and then he resorts to a schoolyard trick of, what's that over there? And that's it, yeah. What else?
So I know we touched on the sword fighting, and
We did.
with the phenomenal sword fighting scene,
Mm-hmm.
but we didn't touch on the other sword fighting scene where it's actually him taking on Rugen. And
Montoya and Rugen?
Montoya and Rugen, yeah. And there was something that I noticed. I watched it again last night, and I was just like, you speak of the etiquette that they had when it was Wesley and Montoya. When it was Rugen and Montoya, there was not that etiquette
No, is
whatsoever. It is
Emphasis.
the classic slime ball fight that he puts up versus Montoya being taking on the role of the hero in that, you know, avenging his father. And what I loved was I completely forgot that Montoya made sure to give him the same cuts, and had Rugen begging. He was like, "I'll give you whatever you want. You can have all of this. You can have the riches. You can have whatever. Just leave me with my life." And that's after like Rugen running away from him like twice. And it wasn't just like running. It was like the sissy running.
Yeah.
Like
He just takes off full steam.
takes off. And I love that scene though, because it falls into the classic, you want the hero to win and you want the slime ball to lose. But it's also the way that he loses and the way Montoya wins.
It's satisfying.
Yes.
Absolutely satisfying. Like, I don't know how you could beat that.
Wedding to arrange, my wife to murder. I'm swapped.
All right, this is a great discussion. Thank you for joining us. And if you're interested in The Princess Bride, definitely check it out.
We also have the As You Wish book by Carrie Elways on CD audio. Again, highly encourage listening to that book because Elways does the narration for it, and it's a wonderful production.
All right, if you have any suggestions, let us know in the comments. Thank you again.